Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are really excited to do a back to school roundtable. We have a few participants, part of our Kunik community joining us today, and then we have our fabulous expert, Tara Jefferson, to lead the call. I am going to turn it over to her so she can introduce herself and the participants, and then we will get going. Please know that the session is recorded. It's only shared within our Kunik community, so feel free to share whatever you want. We're all in this together and we're hoping to learn from each other. So your experiences will really help everyone. If there are any questions, you can always ping me in the chat if you'd like to do it privately, or if you'd like to do it to everyone. I will be monitoring that. So if anything comes up, feel free to use that. All right, guys, here we go. On to you, Tara.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. I'm really excited about this. I think I can't even remember. I think this is my third Kunik chat that I've done this year, maybe fourth, not even sure, but I always have a great time on these calls. So I'm really excited for this one. I'm Tara Jefferson, as Jessica said. I am the founder of the Self-Care Suite. It's an online wellness community that I created back in 2015 for Black women and other women of color to really prioritize their rest and be able to create new blueprints for generational wellness. And I would say, for most of us, this past year has been challenging in terms of wellness and trying to stay, as safe as we can, as calm as we can. So I think that this is going to be a really great discussion. To kick it off, I will say that I have two children. I have a sophomore. I always have to stop and think because COVID ages and grades and everything, I'm still, fuzzy. But my daughter is a 10th grader in high school now. She did her first year of high school, her 9th grade year virtually. And then my son is in 8th grade and he did his 7th grade year virtually. We're in Ohio, where our COVID protocols and everything have been, kind of shifting over the course of the pandemic, but now it's kind of open and everything is kind of quote unquote going back to normal. So I just wanted to do let the other members of the panel do an introduction to let us know a little bit about how old your kids are, what type of schooling that they did over the course of the pandemic, and where you're based. So I think we can start off with you, Mariah, because you're the first one on my screen.
Hi, my name is Mariah. I'm based just outside of DC. I have two children. School actually started yesterday, so I'm excited to say I have a 2nd grader and a kindergartner. My 2nd grader was pulled out of kindergarten, public school. Both of them are in public school. And my my kindergartner was sent home one day and spent the rest of kindergarten, most of 1st grade at home, learning virtually. And then went back right at the tail end of 1st grade and is now starting 2nd grade 5 days a week in person. My kindergartner, the one who just started kindergarten today, was sent home from preschool and just caught like the tail end of her pre-K year. And now is very excited to be in kindergarten.
All right, Adam.
Yes, my name's Adam Schrader. I live in Austin, Texas, and I have 4 kids. I've homeschooled them throughout. I've got I guess going by just age grades, it's a lot easier. One going into 6th or started 6th, I guess now. 1 3rd grader, and then twin 1st graders. Like I said, homeschooling them since day one, but the 6th grader was going to start public school because we tell them once they hit 3rd grade, they can choose whether they want to homeschool or go to public school. And he said, I wanted to go to public school. So we signed him up. And then Texas had their thing where you couldn't mandate masks in school, and all of they did a survey of all of the schools, and the school that we're zoned to was like the lowest percentage of parents who were going to make their kids wear masks. So we told him, you can either virtual school for a semester or we can just homeschool you for a semester. And so he chose to do homeschool for that semester. So that's where we are. And then the COVID really only affected us. It kicked the twins out of their preschool for the last couple months.
All right, Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I am just outside of Boston. I live in a little town, well, not town, it's a little city of Framingham. I have 3 children. I have a rising second grader. He'll start second grade next week, next Wednesday. So he's currently at camp right now. We, like Mariah, missed half of or the tail end of kindergarten. And pretty much all of first grade, he was able to go starting in April, when our state said that they basically said they want us all back, and it was the parents' choice to either not or go. And I thought that was kind of our opportunity to try when the most regulations were there and see how things were going, especially when we could have pulled back and gone to virtual if we wanted to at that point. I have a 4-year-old who's in preschool right now. He goes a couple days a week. And then I have an almost 1.5-year-old who just started daycare about 2 weeks ago. They've been mostly with me trying to juggle the work home life. The virtual experience was public schools for them, but private preschool right now. Yeah, the virtual school was interesting. I'm lucky to have a child that sets his alarms and knows when he has to go back and all that. So I'm very, very fortunate in that way. I know that was not the experience for a lot of people. So I'm lucky for that, that reason.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Victoire, am I saying your name right?
Yes, you are. Hi. So I have Madeleine is 6 and she's gonna enter 2nd grade. She was in school all of last year. And then Winston is gonna enter pre-K. First time he's gonna have like social interaction except for his sisters. So curious about how that will work, and nervous also because it's all very like remote and distance and you can't go into school and you can't all of that. And then I have Louise, who is 10 months old, and she is with our nanny full-time.
Awesome. So I feel like we have a little bit of variety here on the panel with homeschooling and some being in public school, some doing private preschool, some, we're just all trying to figure this out. So those of you who are also on the call, I'd love to hear how old your kids are, just so I can kind of get a sense of who's in the room. I see we're kind of on the panel, we're kind of condensed here in the younger ages. So I'd be curious to see if anybody else in the room has any older children or any insights of what that's like. I know I would love to hear it as a parent of 2 teens now. My God, my son just turned 13 at the beginning of August. So I'm just like, I have 2 teens, like this is it. Like the baby years and the youth years are coming to a close. So one thing that I think Adam kind of mentioned about the school district and doing a survey. I'm curious to just hear from the parents on the panel. How well do you think personally your school districts took parent input into consideration when they're making these? Did you feel heard? Did you feel like you had an opportunity to really voice, what your preferences were? And how did that go? And maybe I'll start with Adam, since you brought it up originally, in terms of, okay, what does this look like for me and my family? How do I kind of address this with the school?
Yeah, so actually, believe it or not, Austin did a great job. I mean, they had like meetings where they took parent input, and then they went against the governor and had their mask mandate. The problem is the enforcement of it, we really just pulled back because we were going to let the legal battle between the politicians and the school districts go again, fighting back and forth. Yeah. And seeing how that ends. But I was impressed with the fact that they were taking input, because they weren't going to offer virtual at first because they were told if they offered virtual, they wouldn't get paid. They wouldn't get any money, any funding for students who did virtual. But then after their meetings, they said, we're going to offer virtual. They did limit it and say your kid has to be uneligible for the vaccine to do it. So it's basically 6th grade and below. But they at least offered that to people. So it was impressive.
Anybody else? Oh,
Yeah,
Victoire?
I'm in Greenwich, Connecticut. I don't know if I said that. And also I felt like it was, so first, right, like the first time in March of 2020 was kind of, right, a mess for everybody, and clearly everybody was scrambling. But after that, I felt like for the following year of school, it was so much more organized, and people had the option of homeschooling or not, and you could switch over pretty easily. It was like 2 weeks, 2 weeks, if you felt like you wanted to, felt one way or the other, and changed throughout the year. And even now, I feel like there's a lot of surveys happening from the town, from the public schools. They're really good at communicating all the steps. So that made me feel better about, where we are with the kids.
Good. And Mariah, Danielle, I think.
Yeah, so I live in one of the largest school districts in the country. And I think they did the best they could, given how large of a machine it is. But we also made headlines for some very negative things. And I don't know that the superintendent or the school board necessarily learned very well from all of those things. And I don't know that they continued listening to families. So it was a struggle.
Yeah. Danielle, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah. I also, Framingham's a pretty big school district as well. There's about 10,000 students in the entire group from high school down to their pre-K program. And there were surveys at the beginning, but not, I haven't had one in probably months. It almost was like June happened, we got through that year, and we're going into the new school year without anything. We haven't been told that there's a mask mandate yet, but I do feel very strongly that the superintendent for our district, if reading between the lines, didn't actually want us all to go back last April in person. So it was more forced by the state to do that. So I feel like if he has any say, we're going to have a mask mandate. And because he's been so upfront about like what his considerations are and what everything, so he's been really transparent, or at least he was, and then summer happened. Before that, he was really transparent about what was the plan or why they wanted mask mandates or why they're saying what they're saying. So I feel like that makes me feel comfortable going in. So even though they haven't said there's a mask mandate, like, or they might have just said that there was one, he'll put one in. So like, I know that that's my gut feeling, that he'll impose that in Framingham, because even though I think in mass for kids, I think they said first graders and kindergartners did not require them in Massachusetts last year, but we did in ours. Like he said, you have to have them even if you're in kindergarten. That's 100% all day. You need to have a mask on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will add that our school district has always had a mask mandate, including this year. We serve 188,000 students, and there's never been a question. It's always been a mask mandate. They just recently, I think 2 days before school started, sent out an email saying they're going to require all faculty and staff to be vaccinated to work in the schools. So I do feel comfortable with that. My reservations are that, it's very hard for kindergartners to stay masked all day, and there's not appropriate distancing because the schools have already been full even before COVID. So I emailed the principal, a day or two before school started and said, what about lunch? How are you guys handling lunch? And he said, that's going to be the one time where they get to take their masks off and there's no social distancing because the cafeteria is just not big enough. The school, the classrooms are not big enough. Everyone, 100% of the student body went back full time, 5 days a week, unless they had a, medical exemption. So, as much hand washing and things as we want to do when you're dealing with an airborne illness, lunch is enough.
Yeah. I definitely, I think here in Ohio, we had a ton of communication and a ton of surveys that went out last year before the beginning of school. And, we heard about, do you feel comfortable? Would you like to be part-time in school, part-time virtually? How would you like for this to work? But ever since, I'd say maybe February of this year, when they started to make a push to bring all the kids back to school, it's just been kind of like, okay, hey, this is the new direction. And our district does have a online academy, but that's only for, I want to say, grade, like middle school and high school. So the younger kids don't have an online virtual option. They just have to go into school, which I think a lot of the parents of younger students actually prefer, because having them at home over the past year has been difficult, to say the least.